The Force is light and full of shadows.
Before we dive in, check the link in the description if you want exclusive timelines, members-only videos you won't find on YouTube, all on our Patreon. Sound before vision. The turbolift hums. Coruscant's traffic moves somewhere far below millions of vessels threading between towers in the upper city's perpetual artificial daylight, the noise carrying even through reinforced durasteel. Even 20 floors below where they need to be. It is the white noise of a civilization that does not know it is dying. Two sets of breathing, both slightly too measured, both slightly too aware. The white noise crests, peaks, and drops away for one single beat of absolute silence. Both men exhale at the same moment. Anakin's right hand is gripping the turbolift railing. He looked down. He needed to confirm that both hands were there, that the right one was not the smoothed composite of synth skin and servos he had spent 23 years tracking as an object separate from himself, rather than a part of himself. It is flesh. The knuckles have gone white from the grip. He catalogs. He has always catalogued. This was Vader's first discipline. Learned early and kept late. Assess, identify, calculate, act. The body is young. The burn damage is absent. The low-frequency vibration of a life support system working continuously against entropy is absent. The shallow mechanical pull of the respirator's rhythm is absent. He has been breathing for the last 30 seconds in the ordinary biological way, air moving in. Air moving out, and the sensation is the most violent thing he has experienced in 23 years. The air smells of recycled atmosphere. Coruscant exhaust, the chemical note of the turbolift's filtration, and beneath that, something that should not reach him 20 floors below where it originates, flowers. She keeps them on her balcony. He has always known this. But the knowledge lived in him the way photographs live in sealed rooms, present, preserved, unreachable. He did not have a nose in the suit. He had sensors. Atmospheric analysis. Data without sensation. He has a nose now. The Force is loud. This is the second thing he registers, and it hits harder than the hands, harder than the breathing, harder than the flowers. The Force has been a corridor for 23 years, narrow, pressurized, warped through machinery and damage, and the particular interference that 2 decades of dark side immersion builds like scar tissue over a wound. He reached the Force through that corridor. He wielded it through that corridor. He barely remembered what it felt like before the corridor. It is open now. It opens outward from the center of his chest in every direction at once, and the sensation is not wonder. It is vertigo. He looks at his hands one more time. He looks at the man standing beside him. He knows. Obi-Wan does not process the sensation the way Anakin does, because Obi-Wan has spent 19 years learning not to process sensation at all, or rather, learning to let it pass through him the way water passes through open hands. Patient, without resistance. The jolt is still there. The youth of the body, the vigor of it, the absence of the desert's long attrition on muscle and bone hits, like stepping from a dim room into open sunlight. Everything is too bright, too present. The Force sings where it is only whispered for almost 2 decades, and the sound of it after so long is nearly unbearable. He has been dimmed so long. He dimmed himself as a discipline, as survival. He walked through 19 years, making himself smaller than he was, letting his light cool to the barest ember, so that nothing moving through the dark could find him by the glow. He is not dim now. He does not let himself feel what that means. Not yet. He tucks the brightness back, habit, reflex, a discipline older than his current body, and turns his attention outward. He looks at the man standing beside him. He knows. 11 seconds. They stand in the turbolift, and neither speaks, and outside the city makes its incomprehensible noise. And inside the small enclosed space there is only the hum of the mechanism and the sound of 2 men who have not breathed the same air in 23 years standing close enough to touch. Anakin is fighting on 3 fronts simultaneously. The first is rage. It is reflexive, and it wants nothing complicated. It wants to name every specific thing that happened, assign weight to each of them, and find someone sufficient to hold the full measure of it. There is no one sufficient. The external targets are dead or not yet guilty of anything. The rage turns inward the way it always does, the way it has always done, and finds him there, where it has always found him. The second is shame. It is worse than the rage, because it has a face. It has the face of the man standing next to him 35 years old in this body, carrying something far older than that behind the eyes. A man who knew Anakin Skywalker and loved him and lost him so completely that he spent 19 years in a desert alone, making himself small, watching from a distance to make sure the very last of something survived. He is responsible for those 19 years. The knowledge sits inside his chest like a structural component he cannot remove without the whole thing collapsing. The third is something he has no word for yet. Quieter than the rage, quieter than the shame. It simply exists in the part of him that has been dark so long he stopped believing anything else lived there. He will understand, later, that it is the beginning of hope. Obi-Wan is doing one thing. He is choosing. He has rehearsed this. 19 years in a desert leaves a man with an extraordinary amount of time to rehearse every version, every entry point, every word that might cut through the layers of it to whatever remains reachable underneath. He knows this is the moment all of it was for. He chooses the truest thing. "You're here," he says. Quiet, almost inaudible beneath the turbolift's hum. A long pause. Then one word from the man beside him, rough, stripped of everything theatrical, stripped of everything except the part that cannot be performed. "Master, Anakin, a breath. How much do you remember?" "Everything." Another silence. Obi-Wan closes his eyes. Briefly, when he opens them, there are no tears. He burned through the tears for this in year 3 on Tatooine. In year 7. In year 14, sitting outside a hut in the dark with the twin moons overhead, finally letting himself understand that the boy was gone, and the thing the boy had become was a fact he had to make peace with. He made it. It cost him more than anything, except that the making of it kept him alive. His voice, when it comes, has fractured slightly at the edges. Only slightly. He was always good at this. "Then we have very little time," he says, "and nothing to waste on what we cannot change." The fracture holds. The deep water holds its surface. Are you with me? The jaw of the man beside him works once. The control in his face is enormous, the specific, learned control of a man who knows in the most complete possible way what losing it costs. "I destroyed everything. Low, even, yes, a beat." The word carries no cruelty, only acknowledgement, clean and complete, from a man who has made the peace that Anakin has not yet earned and cannot be handed. And now we will build something instead. The turbolift reaches the floor. The doors begin to open. Something shifts in both of them, imperceptible to any observer, but present. Obi-Wan's bearing settles into the familiar architecture of a Jedi Knight on assignment, composed, capable, a man who has done this before. Anakin's shoulders find the slightly too wide posture of a young Padawan who has not yet learned to take up only the space he needs. The performance begins. It has to. The protocol droid waiting outside has sensors, and the woman inside reads political performance the way other people read weather, by instinct and by pattern and by everything that is not quite the words. Before they step out one beat, Anakin's hand on Obi-Wan's arm. The grip of a man who has been underwater for a very long time and has found something solid. Palpatine doesn't know yet. Fast, barely above a whisper, the words sequenced with military precision. We have hours, maybe days before he senses something's wrong. The chips in the clones, I know about the chips. A beat of surprise. He had not expected that. The Camino connection. I know. I had 19 years. A pause. Processing, then you know we can end this before Geonosis. I know we can. Obi-Wan steps forward and out of the elevator. His voice drops to nothing as the droid turns toward them, the final words spoken over his shoulder, barely there. Whether we should, that is the conversation we will have later. Tonight, we smile. They walk into Padme Amidala's apartment side by side. Anakin Skywalker is not afraid of this moment. This is new. Stranger than the hands. Stranger than the Force opening back up. Stranger, even, than smelling her flowers from 20 floors below. In another life, This moment was the epicenter of everything: the obsession, the longing with no clean outlet, the need that built pressure until it found the wrong place to go. He walked toward her the way you walk toward something you cannot control, propelled by what he could not name, and frightened of it equally. He walks in now like a man walking into a room. The absence of fear is so total and so unfamiliar that, for just a moment, he nearly stumbles. He catches it. He steadies. He moves forward. They have work to do. The apartment is exactly as he remembers it. This is the thought Anakin does not allow himself to finish, because the rooms he is remembering from are not rooms he ever stood in as a welcome guest, and the memories are complicated by the specific violence of how they ended. He files it. He has spent 23 years learning to file things that cannot be useful in the present moment. He focuses on the work. The protocol droid announces them with the officious precision of expensive programming. Captain Typho moves to an interior doorway and speaks over his shoulder. Dorm, one step back, evaluates both of them with the flat professional attention of someone whose job requires not trusting anyone until she has sufficient reason to. Anakin has already mapped the space. Entry vectors: 3. Windows: 8. 4. Accessible from adjacent platforms. The security formation is weighted toward the main corridor and dangerously thin on the eastern facing. He will address that before they sleep. Padma Amidala walks into the room. He knew she would. He knew what she would look like. He knew the specific way she carries authority, not in her posture, which is elegant and deliberately unimposing, but in the quality of attention she gives a room when she enters it. She reads everything in the first 3 seconds. He knows this because he watched her do it 10,000 times in another life. Briefing rooms and war rooms, and the quiet of rooms that were only theirs. What he did not know, what he could not have predicted, was what it would feel like to see her and not be afraid. She studies them both. Her eyes move between Obi-Wan and Anakin the way an analyst moves through data, gathering, sorting. Flagging inconsistencies, she finds one immediately, and it is Anakin. He is not what she expected. The Senate whispers about Skywalker had always carried the same note: extraordinary gift, uncertain temperament. She braced herself for a boy with his feelings arranged on his face like furniture he had not yet learned to move. She is looking at someone else entirely. "You've changed," she says. Wary, precise, he meets her eyes. "Quite a bit, Senator." He looks away first. Not evasion, something deliberate in it, something that takes the weight of the moment off her without announcing that it is doing so. His gaze moves to the window and the Coruscant skyline beyond, and the expression on his face is one she cannot categorize. Not longing. Not hunger. Something quieter and more specific, the look of a man seeing something he has not seen in a very long time, and choosing, consciously, not to reach for it. He turns back. "Your security has 3 soft points. I'll want to address them before morning." A beat. Something in his face that no 19-year-old has any right to carry. "But first I need to know if you trust us." "Completely. The Jedi Order has my trust." "I didn't ask about the Order." A silence. She looks at him for a moment longer than she looks at most people. She is reading him the way she reads rooms, all of it, simultaneously, the surface and the architecture underneath. What she finds does not match any category she has built for Padawans, for young men, for anyone she has met in 15 years of political life. "All right," she says, finally, "ask me what you need to ask." Padam's private office. Late night, though, on Coruscant the distinction is mostly architectural. The artificial light outside does not dim, the traffic does not thin, the city does not sleep. Through the windows, the skyline is a geometry of light with no horizon and no end. 3 chairs. 1 small round table. No aides. No droids. Dorm outside the door by request, which she accepted with the specific expression of a professional who has calculated that objecting will cost more than complying. Obi-Wan speaks. He does not perform. He has no time for it and no interest in it. He speaks the way he has done everything since the elevator, with the economy of a man who built and rebuilt this exact architecture in the dark for 19 years, until he can lay it out in sequence, without a wasted word, without sentiment. "Senator," he says, "what I am about to tell you will require you to distrust the Republic's highest office. I would not ask it of you if I did not know, with certainty, that the man sitting in the Chancellor's seat is planning the destruction of both the Jedi Order and the democracy you have spent your life defending. Padawans Amidala has been a queen. She has sat across from Trade Federation blockades and Senate assassination attempts and the particular ugliness of institutions consuming the people they claim to serve. She has been frightened before, and she has learned to let fear live somewhere that does not interfere with the next decision. She looks at Obi-Wan now with level eyes. Then tell me, she says. The Chancellor is a Sith Lord. He has been for decades, and the clone army currently being grown in secret on a planet called Kamino contains a hidden mechanism designed to kill every Jedi simultaneously on his command. The silence that follows is not theatrical. It is the silence of a woman processing a sentence that, if true, rewrites everything she thought she understood about the last decade of Republic history. She does not perform shock. She sits with the information the way she sits with difficult votes, measuring it, testing its weight, not discarding it because it is inconvenient. You have evidence? Slowly, we will. By this time tomorrow night, we will have everything. She absorbs this. She does not ask how. She does not ask why she should believe them. Those are the questions of someone who has not yet decided to be in the room, and Padawans Amidala decided to be in this room the moment Anakin looked away from her window and came back with that steady, unreadable face and asked if she trusted them. Not the Order. Them, she heard something true in the distinction. She is still working out what. What do you need from me? Not a question. Obi-Wan tells her. The banking clan records, accessible through the Senate Oversight Committee without triggering the extensive network of political attention Palpatine has built over 2 decades in this building. The Naboo intelligence channels, which can move 2 people to a classified destination without a formal council requisition that would appear in any log Palpatine's people monitor. And finally, the thing that requires her specifically, the thing no one else in this room or this building can provide. When the evidence against the Chancellor is ready to be presented, Obi-Wan says, the person who carries it into the Senate chamber cannot have any connection to the Jedi Order. The moment a Jedi delivers it, Palpatine's people will frame it as a coup. A power grab. The Order overreaching its mandate. He looks at her with the patience of a man who has examined this particular problem from every angle for a very long time. You are the only person in this building whose integrity is beyond the reach of that argument. You have opposed executive overreach publicly and at personal cost. You have no institutional loyalty to the Order. You are, and I say this with complete respect, the only carrier the evidence can survive. Padam is quiet. Then, you've been planning this for some time. Longer than you would believe, Obi-Wan says. And something in his voice, for just a moment, is much older than his face. She looks at Anakin. He has not spoken during the briefing. He has sat with his hands folded on the table and his eyes moving between Obi-Wan and Padam with the systematic attention of a man running assessments on a conversation rather than a battlefield. He meets her gaze when she finds it. He's telling the truth. Flat, certain, the words carry no effort, they are simply true, and he is reporting them. She nods once. Tell me what I need to do first. The balcony. Coruscant at night, which is Coruscant exactly as it always is, lit from beneath, lit from everywhere. The sky not dark so much as a different shade of luminance. The city breathes below them. Somewhere inside it, Palpatine is in his office, pulling something towards something else, the machinery of it running smoothly after decades of use. He barely needs to touch it anymore. Anakin leans against the railing. He has been watching Padam through the office window, not with the longing that used to live in him like a second skeleton, rigid and aching, but with the specific, careful attention of a man watching something fragile, knowing precisely the cost of losing it. Obi-Wan stands beside him. He notices. He says nothing about it yet. You did well in there, he says. Anakin is quiet for a moment. It doesn't feel like anything I did. He looks for the word and does not find a better one. It feels like standing in a room I burned down, except the fire never started. That is exactly what it is. A longer silence. The city carries its noise up to them, distant enough to be texture rather than sound. Obi-Wan. He does not look away from the window. In another, in the one we came from, she believed in you, Obi-Wan says, quietly, until the very end. And then she died believing that you were still inside it somewhere, waiting to come back. A pause that has weight to it. She was right. She was just 19 years early. Anakin's jaw sets. One motion, controlled and complete. He looks out at the city, at the lights, at the traffic, at the civilization that does not know how close it came and will not know if they do this correctly. Then, we have work to do, he says. By midnight, the architecture is in place. Padam will move through Senate channels at first light, quiet inquiries, the kind a diligent senator makes about procurement processes, nothing that reads as alarm. Her Naboo network will arrange transport to Kamino under a diplomatic cover that leaves no traceable thread back to the Order. Obi-Wan will manage the Force concealment. Anakin's presence is not subtle, it has never been subtle, and the closer they move to Palpatine's sphere, the more critical it becomes that nothing announces them before they are ready. This is Obi-Wan's work. He has been practicing it for 19 years. He is very good at it. Anakin will be the blade. He has been called this before, in other rooms, by other people, always as a warning, always as a concern. The weapon that could not be fully directed. He used it as a weapon himself, once, the weight of it, the rage it carried. He accepts it now without fear and without pride. Just purpose. For the first time in either of his lives, those two things are not the same. The ASIN 121 assassin droid arrives at 0217 hours. Anakin is waiting for it. Not at Padam's window, which is where it is going. Not in the corridor outside her chambers, which is where a Padawan who had not lived this night before would position himself. He is 3 floors above and 40 meters south, on an access platform that looks down on the angle of approach, because he knows the approach angle. He knows it the way you know a nightmare carried long enough that it becomes structural, woven into how you read rooms and read distances and read the particular quality of silence before something terrible arrives. The droid moves through the traffic lanes on autopilot, small, quick, programmed to navigate irregularly, to resist visual tracking, to look like debris rather than intent. In the original timeline, it reached the window, cut through the glass with the patience of a machine that has no reason to hurry. Delivered its cargo. Anakin reaches out before it clears the final lane. Not with his hand. He doesn't gesture. He finds the droid in the Force, a small mechanical nothing, a blip of circuitry and purpose, and applies pressure to its repulsor motivators simultaneously, precise and complete, and the droid drops 40 feet before he catches it and holds it suspended in the gap between towers. He takes the Kohuns, the 2 venomous creatures in their sealed delivery tube, extracted from the cargo compartment with quiet telekinetic efficiency, contained and immobilized before they register that they have been removed from anything. He sets them on the platform behind him. They are not relevant. They are the mechanism, not the point. The droid he sends back the way it came. Its confirmation signal intact. Its cargo compartment reading is empty because it is empty. Its return programming untouched, the routing unaltered, the timestamp clean. Somewhere in this city, Jango Fett will receive a mission complete confirmation from a droid that completed nothing. Anakin has approximately 4 minutes before that confirmation fails to hold up to scrutiny. Obi-Wan is already moving when Anakin descends to the lower platform. He has been tracking Zam Wessel's position since she launched the droid not through the Force, which would risk broadcasting his presence in proximity to Palpatine's continuous surveillance of the city's Force-sensitive population, but through the building's external sensor network. Accessed quietly through a security terminal that Padam's credentials opened, and that will not appear in any official record of this evening. He is, for a man who spent 19 years learning patience as a survival discipline, very fast when speed is the requirement. The signal traces 6 blocks east, a maintenance level with sight lines to the launch coordinates. Zam does what good contractors do. She watches the confirmation herself rather than trusting telemetry she cannot verify. They reach the maintenance level at 0223. She is already gone. Professional, she received the confirmation, noted it, moved. In another night she would have gone to the Outlander Club, had a drink, died at the bar Jango's Saberdart finding her throat before she could say the one word that mattered. The investigation would have run on a single physical clue. Weeks of work to reach a conclusion that required only asking the right person the right question. Tonight she goes somewhere else. It does not matter. She is not what they are here for. What they are here for is the launch equipment she left behind, the encrypted frequency still cycling in its broadcast loop, the channel architecture, the 2-digit location code embedded in the return transmission header. Anyone else in the galaxy would need days to extract it cleanly. Anakin reads it in 11 seconds. Some knowledge does not have an off switch. Building 7 of a residential block in the mid-level commercial district. 16th floor, southeast corner. 4 minutes, Anakin says. Obi-Wan is already at the door. Jango Fett opens it expecting a confirmation code. He gets 2 Jedi. The moment lasts approximately 1/4 of a second. The door completes its arc. Jango's eyes register, categorize, and his hand moves toward his holster. Professional, fast, the automatic response of a man who has drawn on people for 30 years and never been second. Anakin is already inside his guard before the hand completes the motion. No force, no lightsaber, no dramatic crossing of the threshold. He covers the distance from the doorway to Jango's chest in a single step, and his hand closes around the Mandalorian's throat, not a choke, a hold, fingers positioned with the specific precision of someone who knows exactly where to apply pressure to communicate without causing damage, and Jango's hand is still moving for the holster when he understands it will not matter. And he stops. He is a professional. He recognizes a lost position. You don't want to do this. Measured, the voice of a man in a bad situation who has learned that panic costs more than it buys. I've killed far better men than you without wanting to. Flat, no heat in it, no performance. I need. One word. Something moves behind Anakin's eyes, cold and patient. The quality of a man looking at a problem he has already solved and waiting only for the confirmation. Who contracted you? Jango holds the gaze for one long beat. He is reading the face in front of him. The face is young 19, he would say, if pressed, but the face is not the problem. The problem is what is behind the face. Jango has looked into the eyes of men who could kill him without a thought. He has charged considerable credits to be in the same room as men like that, because it takes one to find one. He knows the look, he knows the specific texture of it, the particular stillness, the way everything unnecessary has been removed from the expression, and what remains is only purpose. He is looking at it now, in a 19-year-old's face. He evaluates. 2 Jedi at his door means the route was read, not the destination, not the window, the route. Someone who knew enough to wait at the beginning of it rather than the end. His confirmation signal was clean. There was no breach he can identify. And yet, you already know, he says. You wouldn't be here otherwise. The name. Not the alias. The real one. The calculation runs. Short-term costs against long-term options against the very simple arithmetic of what 2 Jedi who have just demonstrated they know more than they should are worth as an ongoing problem. Tyrannus, he says. And where is he based? Geonosis, for now. Anakin releases him and steps back. The hold was never personal, and its ending is not. He stops when he has what he came for, completely and without remainder, the way a surgical instrument is simply put down when the operation is complete. Thank you, he says. Obi-Wan moves through the safe house with the thorough attention of a man who has had 19 years to think about what evidence looks like before it becomes evidence, and what it looks like after. He photographs the communications equipment, the encrypted frequency, the channel architecture, the return transmission logs connecting this terminal to Geonosis across several weeks of careful contact. He removes the Camino saber dart from the weapons cache on the table, the dart Jango intended for Zam Wesell, his standard method of closing a contractor relationship before it develops inconvenient information. He bags it. It is physical evidence. It requires a chain of custody. It will have one. Jango stands against the wall and watches him work. He is not bound. He does not attempt to leave. The math has shifted, and Jango Fett has survived as long as he has, because he is better at math than pride. He is calculating. He will contact his contractor. He will report an anomaly in the operation timeline irregularities, a missed window but not the specifics of this conversation, because that information is worth more held than disclosed. A contractor who hands over everything he knows the moment something goes wrong is not a contractor who collects a second payment. 2 Jedi who came through his door and left him breathing are worth more alive than dead. He says nothing as they take what they came for. He says nothing as they go. The street below is empty at this hour. Coruscant's mid-level residential blocks cycle through a half-quiet in the pre-dawn not silence. The city never reaches silence but a reduction, a dimming of the constant traffic roar, to something that registers as almost ordinary. Their footsteps on the Durasteel walkway carry in a way they would not carry in daylight. "You were frightening in there," Obi-Wan says. "I was efficient." Those are not always different things from the outside. Anakin walks without breaking stride. The pause that follows is not empty. Something moves inside it, something that requires the space. When his voice comes, it is level. The control in it is not performance. It is load-bearing. I know what it looks like when the line disappears. Quieter now. Not soft reduced. The specific reduction of a man saying something true that costs something. I've been on the other side of it. And tonight? Tonight the line was there. A beat. I could feel it. Obi-Wan nods slowly. They walk another few meters in the half-quiet of the empty street, 2 figures in a city of trillions where no one is watching this particular corner. Then, with the careful precision of a man who has thought about how to say this for a long time, "Good." A beat held the appropriate length. "Tell me when it isn't. That's all I ask. Just tell me." Anakin says nothing. But he holds Obi-Wan's gaze for a moment before returning his eyes to the street ahead, and that is answer enough. Padam's network moves them off-planet before dawn. A non-Republic transport, registered to a Naboo Cultural Foundation with 11 years of unblemished diplomatic travel. The kind of vessel that passes through checkpoints without attracting the specific attention that Order or Republic credentials provoke in port authorities, whose secondary salary comes from Palpatine's intelligence network. The pilot asks nothing. She has been told not to, and she is the kind of person who understands that certain instructions are their own explanation. Kamino appears in the cockpit window 6 hours out. Gray, storm-racked. The kind of planet that looks, from orbit, as though it has been in a prolonged disagreement with its own atmosphere and neither side has the capacity to win. Lightning moves through the cloud cover in slow, massive arcs, not the sharp branching fractures of a city storm, not the quick ground strikes of a desert night. This is planetary lightning, the kind that builds across uninterrupted ocean for 1,000 kilometers before it discharges, the kind that meteorologists describe with a particular tone that is half technical vocabulary and half honest awe. Anakin sits in the co-pilot's seat and looks at it. He has been here before. Not in this body. Not at this point in the sequence. He came here later during the wars, when the men being grown on those sterile white platforms were already soldiers, already deployed, already brothers whose faces he had memorized, and whose voices he could identify in full combat noise. He came here when the relationship was already established, and the use was already underway, and the fundamental question of what the clones were had been settled by the simple fact of what they were being used for. He is here before all of that. He looks at the planet for a long time. He does not name what he is feeling, because he has never been good at naming things that do not have tactical value, and this does not have tactical value. He simply sits with it, the weight of knowing what is down there, and knowing what it was, and knowing what it will not be this time. "Hello," he says. Quiet to no one. Tipoca City rises from the ocean on legs. This is the first fact of Kamino that strikes anyone who sees it. The civilization has no relationship with the planet it occupies. It simply sits above it, elevated on enormous Durasteel columns, the platforms arranged with the clean precision of something designed rather than grown, something with no interest in the environment below it, except as a surface to anchor to. The rain does not stop. It has not stopped since their approach vector. The Kaminoan equivalent of weather is simply more or less vertical water. The storm system that rings the planet does not arrive and depart. It is a permanent condition. The Kaminoans have designed everything around it: the enclosed walkways, the filtered ventilation, the way every window faces inward toward artificially lit interior spaces rather than outward toward the gray chaos below. They live in a place that demands they not look outside. Anakin has noted this. He notes everything now. It takes so little effort it has become almost involuntary. Lama Su receives them in the main atrium with the specific warmth of a species that has no instinct for warmth and has studied its performance in the species it does business with. He is tall. They are all tall. The Kaminoans move through their own architecture with the unhurried authority of beings that have never had predators and have therefore never developed the body language of prey. Lama Su folds his hands. He produces the facial arrangement that serves the function of a smile. He welcomes them as advanced liaison officers. He processes Padam's Senate authorization with the comfortable ease of an organization accustomed to the Republic's upper administrative tier. He is not nervous. He should be nervous. Nala Se arrives 17 minutes after them, summoned from the medical research wing. Where Lama Su projects a prime minister's professional warmth, Nala Se projects nothing at all. She is a scientist. She presents data and receives data, and treats the space between as irrelevant. Her eyes move across Obi-Wan and Anakin with the detached precision of someone running a rapid classification, threat level, information level, containment probability. She recalibrates twice in the first 3 seconds of looking at Anakin. He watches her recalibrate and says nothing. Obi-Wan speaks. He speaks with the measured ease of a Jedi Master on a routine oversight visit professional. Collegial, carrying the gravity of someone whose age exceeds his face. He asks about the development schedule, the training protocols, the accelerated growth timeline, the readiness projections for full Republic deployment. He asks the questions a liaison officer would ask. Lama Su answers with the fluency of a man who has answered these questions before, whose entire operation was built with the anticipation of answering them. The numbers are precise, the projections are confident. Whatever else he is genuinely proud of what they have built here. Anakin says almost nothing for 37 minutes. He stands slightly behind Obi-Wan and to the left, in the position a Padawan would occupy during a senior Jedi's briefing, and he listens. He watches Lama Su's hands, the specific, minimal gestures a Kaminoan uses to indicate emphasis. He watches Nala Se's attention move between the conversation and something she is choosing not to think about visibly. He watches the way both of them redirect questions about chain of command toward operational logistics. Not always. Twice is a pattern. He lets the picture build. At the 37th minute, he says, "I'd like to see the medical laboratory." The growth chamber is not a room. It is a cathedral. The ceiling disappears into a light diffused white distance. The gestation tanks line both walls in columns of 6, stacked with the same architectural precision as everything else on this planet, the precision of people who have decided that aesthetics and efficiency should produce identical results. Amber fluid. The faint motion of development inside each tank, barely visible, a shifting that only resolves into form when you look long enough to let your eyes adjust. Millions of them. In various stages, some in the earliest phases cellular architecture, the beginning of the neural scaffolding that will eventually become a man. Others approaching the final weeks of the acceleration process, the compressed growth that takes 12 biological years and folds them into a fraction of that time. A technology the Kaminoans treat as routine, a technology the rest of the galaxy would find extraordinary if the rest of the galaxy knew it existed. Anakin walks through the chamber and does not speak. He walks slowly, not because he is uncertain, because he is looking at the faces in the later stage tanks, the ones close enough to completion that the features have resolved and the faces are all the same face. He has seen that face 10,000 times. In briefing rooms, in cockpits, in the particular dark of the executor's corridors, passing troopers who straightened when he walked past, in the moment before Order 66, when those same faces turned. He does not let himself feel it yet. He files it the way he files everything that cannot be useful in the present moment. He walks. He stops at a medical scanning console. He does not ask permission. He pulls up the interface with the automatic confidence of someone who knows what the controls do without being shown, who finds the correct scan in the directory in 4 seconds rather than 40. He selects a clone in the final development stage. He brings up the neural mapping overlay and looks at it for a long moment. Then he points to the specific location without looking up from the display. "This is not a standard neurological structure," he says. "No accusation in it, only precision." The pause that comes from Nala Se lasts 0.2 of a second too long. That is a standard growth artifact from the acceleration process. All accelerated developmental sequences produce minor anomalies. He looks up. "I know what a growth artifact looks like." He meets her eyes. He does not raise his voice. He does not alter his expression. He looks at her with the patience of a man who has all the time he needs and knows it. "I know what a behavioral modification biochip looks like. I know what it does when it's triggered. I know the name of the man who commissioned its installation." He holds the silence long enough to let its weight register in everyone in the room. "I am going to give you one opportunity to tell me the truth before this becomes something other than an inquiry." Nala Se does not break. She recalibrates, very fast, behind completely controlled features, and she does not break because she is a scientist with 40 years of professional discipline and the compartmentalization that discipline produces. She looks at Anakin with the expression of someone still deciding whether the position has genuinely changed. Lama Su decides first. He is a prime minister. His considerations have always been political and contractual, the calculus of institutional survival over ideological loyalty. He evaluates the situation with the Kaminoan pragmatism that has kept this facility operational for 15 years through the management of extraordinarily sensitive information. The contract with Tyrannus is compromised. The person standing in this room no more than any unauthorized party should know. The path that preserves Kamino's viability and protects it from becoming an accessory to whatever this is about to become is cooperation. "Perhaps," he says carefully, "we should move to a private conference room." The conference room is white. Everything on Kamino is white, or pale enough that the distinction does not register. They sit. What comes out of the next 40 minutes is not comfortable for anyone at the table, including the Kaminoans, who carry the specific discomfort of people being asked to articulate things they agreed not to think about when they agreed to them. The chip specifications were provided directly by Tyrannus, a contractual requirement, presented as a standard behavioral modification protocol, loyalty enforcement, obedience architecture, nothing outside the parameters of what a military contractor might reasonably build into soldiers. The framing was careful. The Kaminoans asked the questions a responsible contractor asks. They received answers that satisfied those questions. They did not ask the questions that would not have been answered. The CFO Dias authorization exists in the founding documentation and nowhere else. All subsequent communications, the modifications, the chip specifications, the specific instructions for placement and trigger programming came through Tyrannus's proxies. The name CFO Dias was used to open the door and never appeared again. Nala Se's research wing received its technical specifications from an entirely separate channel, formatted in the clinical language of behavioral architecture that allowed the work to proceed without requiring anyone to state plainly what the work was for. She knew the chip triggers a behavioral override. She knew its location in the brain, the specific junction at the base of the skull where the implant sits against the brainstem, where removal requires precision and discovery requires knowing exactly where to look. She knew its activation requirement. She did not know the specific designation, Order 66. She was not told. She did not need to know what the override produced in practice to build the mechanism that would make it produce it. Every clone currently in development carries a functional version of the chip. Every clone in active training. Every clone already deployed in advanced detachment service across the Republic. Obi-Wan listens to all of this. When Nala Se finishes the technical summary and the room settles into the particular silence of a conversation that has reached the edge of what voluntary disclosure will produce, he folds his hands on the table. He does not lean forward. He simply is present, completely, in the way that makes people feel the full weight of what they are sitting across from. You have spent 15 years producing the finest soldiers in the galaxy's history. His voice carries no accusation, It is a fact. He states it as a fact. You should know that the man who commissioned these chips intends those soldiers to be used against the very republic that would have been their employer. He gives them the pause. He gives them the full length of it. I am offering you a choice. You may cooperate fully with the removal of every chip in every active and developing clone, under the joint supervision of the Republic Senate and the Jedi Order. Or you may continue to protect a client relationship with a Sith Lord, and when the truth emerges, and it will emerge within the weak Camino, will share the weight of what was done here. 8 seconds of silence. Anakin counts them. We will cooperate, Lama Su says. The words arrive with the weight of a man crossing a threshold he understands is one way. A wise choice, Anakin says, the first words he has spoken since the growth chamber. Quiet, no drama in them at all. You'll want to begin with the ARC troopers. They're already operational. Obi-Wan works. He builds the evidence package with the systematic thoroughness of someone constructing a structure that must hold under the kind of pressure that dismantles institutions. Recorded confessions from both Lama Su and Nala Se, their voices, their words, the Caminoan precision of their technical descriptions working against them when those descriptions are laid beside what the technology produces. Medical documentation of the chip's specifications and placement. The communication logs connecting Tyrannus to the Commission, time-stamped, cross-referenced, the CFO-Dias authorization, flagged as the forgery layer it is. A complete picture, assembled and sealed, the kind of evidence that a Senate committee cannot examine and choose not to understand. Anakin goes to the barracks. The clones at this stage of development are young by any standard outside this planet. Accelerated growth means the oldest are barely in their 20s biologically, though their training carries a precision that has nothing to do with youth. They drill in formation. Weapons practice. The coordinated efficiency of identical bodies trained to identical specifications. They respond to him the way soldiers respond to officers, attentively, crisply, the automatic straightening of posture that happens when someone carrying authority enters a space. He walks among them slowly. He looks at their faces. Every face is the same face. He walked past this face for 20 years. He issued orders to this face and watched it execute them without hesitation, without the consideration that makes a choice rather than a program. He knows what was done to these men before they were born. He knows what it produced. He knows they do not know it cannot know it, because the mechanism sits in the base of their skulls and waits, patient as everything mechanical, and they have never had a reason to look for it. He does not let himself feel the full weight of it here, in front of them, in their faces that are one face that is no one's face yet. There will be time. He walks. The transport lifts off from Camino before dawn, or what passes for dawn on a planet where the light quality changes but the sky never clears. The storm has not let up. It was never going to let up. Anakin sits at the viewport and watches the planet recede into its permanent argument with its own atmosphere, the lightning still moving in those slow, enormous arcs, the cloud cover unbroken, the ocean below invisible beneath the weight of the weather above it. The chips are just the mechanism, he says, not to anyone in particular, to the fact of it. The plan runs on trust. Every Jedi trusting that the clones are allies, every clone trusting that their programming is their own. Yes, Obi-Wan says. Anakin watches the lightning move through the cloud cover one more time. A slow arc, then another. Patient, planetary in scale. We spent 20 years fighting men who were already dead. Obi-Wan does not answer. There is nothing to answer with. The Jedi Temple at dawn. 5 spires, the central one carrying the council chamber at its peak, rising above Coruscant's upper city in the gray light of a morning the planet's artificial illumination makes only technically different from night. They enter through the public atrium and are met by 2 Jedi Knights who have been asked to escort them, not summoned. Escorted, the distinction is precise and intentional. Anakin notes it. He notes the posture of the Knights professionally neutral, the specific neutrality of people who have been told to convey neither welcome nor censure while conveying both. He notes the absence of Padawans in the corridors they walk through, which means the route has been quietly cleared. The Council does not want witnesses to whatever is about to happen. He has walked these corridors in black armor while the remaining Jedi made themselves as small as possible and hoped the darkness did not notice them in the corners. He has stood at the apex of this spire and given orders that ended careers and worlds. Standing in a young man's body, being escorted by 2 knights who are trying not to look at him directly, he finds that he is not afraid of this room or what it is about to say. That absence of fear is its own kind of strange. The council chamber is exactly as the histories describe it, and exactly as he remembers. 12 seats. Circular, the windows behind each master frame the Coruscant skyline with deliberate design 12 perspectives, 12 vantage points. A room that says to whoever stands at its center, "We see in every direction, and you stand alone in the middle of us." 11 of the 12 seats are occupied. The 12th belongs to the master who is standing Obi-Wan, who has entered a room he has sat in before, and now stands in without ceremony, without apology, because he has spent 19 years in a desert, learning exactly what he would say if he ever stood here again, and is finally saying it. Anakin stands beside him. He does not hunch, he does not defer. He stands the way Vader stood in Imperial command room, still, centered, taking up exactly the space he occupies, and not 1 centimeter more. The chamber's arrangement is designed to make the person at its center feel the weight of being surrounded by authority. He has felt heavier weights. Mace Windu is looking at him. Not with anger, with something more specific and more unsettling than anger, the concentrated attention of a man who reads people as a combat discipline, who has built a fighting form on the ability to process darkness in his opponents, who has spent his entire career understanding the difference between what something looks like and what it is. He has been reading Anakin Skywalker since they walked in. What he is reading does not match what he expected to read. 36 hours, says Ki-Adi-Mundi, not an accusation of fact, stated with the clipped precision of a Syrian who treats imprecision as a moral failing. Without council notification, without a mission requisition, using Senate authorization rather than order channels. That is correct, Obi-Wan says. The senator provided access voluntarily and with full knowledge of our purpose. He does not hedge. He does not frame it as regrettable necessity or reluctant deviation. He states it. If the council would permit me to explain the purpose, I believe the procedural concerns will resolve themselves. A silence. Yoda, who has not spoken since they entered, and has not moved since they entered, sits with his eyes half closed and his hands folded over the head of his Geimer stick, and the quality of attention that looks, to those who don't know what they're looking at, like an old creature resting. He is not resting. He is listening to something no one else in the room is currently listening to. Obi-Wan presents the case. He presents it with the patient, architectured precision of someone who built this structure in the dark for 19 years until he could lay it out in sequence without a wasted word. The Jango Fett interception, the established connection to an off-world contractor, the Geonosis communication link, the physical evidence of the Camino saber dart recovered from Fett's possession, the clone army, the scale of it, the development timeline, the fact of its existence entirely outside any authorized Republic military channel, the inhibitor chips, medical documentation, the Kaminoan confessions recorded and sealed, the chip's location and architecture, and what it does when it is activated, the Sifo Dyas forgery, the authorization used to open the commission that appears nowhere in the subsequent chain of command, the Tyrannus connection, Jango Fett's confirmation, the Kaminoan communication logs, the encrypted frequency active between Geonosis and Tipoca City across several weeks of careful contact. And then the last link, laid down without theater, Count Dooku, operating under the Sith identity of Darth Tyrannus, is the apprentice of an as-yet unnamed Sith Lord, operating within the Republic's highest levels. He does not name Palpatine. Not yet. The evidence does not yet directly implicate the Chancellor, and Obi-Wan did not survive 19 years in a desert by moving faster than his evidence supports. The Council's reaction moves through its stages. Ki-Adi-Mundi demands verification protocols. Plo Koon raises the question of chain of custody for the Kaminoan recordings. Coleman Trebor asks about the legal standing of confessions obtained without council mandate. These are not unreasonable concerns. They are the concerns of an institution built on the principle that procedure is what separates justice from vigilantism. And the institution is not wrong to raise them. Yoda sits. He listens to his colleagues ask their questions, and then he listens to the space between the questions, and then he listens to something further down that the questions are sitting on top of. He does not look away from Obi-Wan. Mace Windu does not look away from Anakin. This body operates on consensus and oversight. Mace's voice is controlled and deliberate, the voice of a man who has strong feeling about what he is saying and has chosen not to let the feeling lead. What you have done constitutes a significant breach of protocol, regardless of the intelligence value of General Windu. The room does not change. The light through the windows does not change. Anakin simply speaks, and the quality of the voice is enough to make the interruption register as something other than rudeness, something that requires attention the way a shift in barometric pressure requires attention, felt before it is understood. With respect. A pause that is not a hesitation. A real one. The length of a decision being honored. When the inhibitor chips activate, and under the current trajectory they were going to, within 3 years you will not have time to convene a session about protocol. He does not raise his voice. He does not step forward. He simply stands at the center of the chamber with 12 masters seated around him and speaks the way a man speaks when he is reporting what he witnessed rather than arguing what he believes. You will have 14 seconds of confusion before every clone soldier in the galaxy fires on every Jedi in their vicinity. A beat. Nothing theatrical in it. I know, because I have been on the other side of that equation. What I am offering you is the chance to have this conversation at all. The silence that follows is absolute. Mace Windu looks at him. Mace Windu has spent his adult life practicing Vapad, a form that requires its practitioner to open themselves to the darkness in an opponent, to channel it rather than block it, to let it flow through and return it. He is of all the masters in this room, the one most intimately familiar with what darkness feels like when it is present in a person standing in front of him. He is reading Anakin Skywalker right now with every tool that ability provides. What he finds does not have a category. There is darkness in this boy. He is certain of that. It is not subtle, it is not hidden, it does not behave the way trained force concealment behaves. It is simply present, the way a scar is present, permanent, structural, a record of something that happened rather than something that is happening. But around it, and through it, and somehow simultaneously occupying the same space, something else. Something that has used the darkness as raw material and built something from it that is not dark. He has no framework for this. In 30 years of Vapad practice, he has never encountered anything that reads this way. What do you mean, he says, slowly, quietly, the other side of that equation. Anakin meets his eyes directly. There is something in the meeting of those eyes that makes Mace Windu's certainty fracture at one specific edge, the edge where certainty becomes assumption, and the fracture is just wide enough. It means I know what we're up against. He turns to Yoda. Master Yoda. A real pause, the kind that comes before something that costs something to say. You've known something was wrong in the Force for years, haven't you? He asks for one day. He doesn't explain. Obi-Wan doesn't require explanation. The Force between them has been reading the same direction since Kamino. Since before Kamino. Since the moment in the elevator when they both understood everything they were carrying into this. Anakin simply asks, and Obi-Wan says what he says. Come back. Not with her. Just come back. The thing left unsaid in those 2 words is every version of the conversation they haven't had yet about what Tatooine will cost him, what it costs a man to stand in the place where his worst night happened before the worst night has happened. Obi-Wan knows better than to have that conversation now. He will have it after. Anakin goes. The Lars homestead sits in the desert the way it always has, low, functional, the moisture evaporators rising from the sand with the patient permanence of things designed to outlast the people who installed them. Owen Lars comes to the door with the flat wariness of a man who has learned that strangers at a desert homestead are rarely a good sign. He looks at the young Jedi on his step. Something moves in his expression, not relief exactly, but the specific cousin of relief that arrives when a dreaded thing has finally come to be dreaded and can now be done instead. He opens his mouth. "I know where she is," Anakin says. "I don't need directions." He is already reading the desert. He has been reading it since before the transport landed. He has had 23 years to remember the exact bearing from this doorstep to the camp, the distance, the terrain, the particular fold in the canyon country where the Tuskens settled. The knowledge of that night lives in him the way that kind of memory always lives, not fading with time. Deepening, he takes a speeder from the homestead. Owen does not argue. He is the kind of man who understands that some things do not require argument. He smells the camp before he sees it. He stops the speeder 2 kilometers out and goes the rest on foot. Not because he needs the approach. Because the ground is specific. Because the last time he walked toward this camp, he was a boy drowning in something he could not name. And this time, he is something else. And the difference deserves the full weight of 2 kilometers of sand under his boots. The canyon mouth opens. The camp resolves from dust and distance into structure. He stops at the perimeter. He has trained himself over decades to feel nothing during engagements. The mask helped, the suit helped. The breathing helped, a constant metronome that regulated everything else, made the mechanical rhythm of survival louder than the human rhythm underneath. He does not have those tools today. He has only the discipline and the reason. He is not here for the Tuskens. They are an obstacle between him and the thing he came for. He moves through them the way a man moves through locked doors efficiently, minimally, without attention to the architecture. He does not draw his lightsaber. A blade announces itself, creates distance, requires the other party to understand what is approaching. He moves through the camp using what 23 years of dark side training built into his bones, the Force used not as a weapon, but as a map. He knows where every person is. He knows the paths between them. He moves through the gaps, and when there are no gaps he creates them, and the camp is not large. What he is here for is crying in a tent at the camp center. He can hear her. He moves faster. The silence afterward lasts as long as it needs to. He does not feel triumph. He does not feel grief. He feels the distance between himself and the tent closing. And that is the only measurement with any weight. She does not scream when he comes through the tent wall. She looks at him. She has not seen him since he was 9 years old. He is physically 19 now, a decade of growth pressed into whatever the Lars family has told her and whatever the Force told her through 10 years of hoping from a distance. By every observable measure she should not recognize him. She looks at his face and recognizes him immediately. Because Shmi Skywalker raised this boy, and the part of her that knows him is not the part that uses eyes. What she sees in his face stops her. She has not seen it in him since he was very small, since before the day Watto sold him, and the boy's eyes went careful in a way that broke something in her that never fully healed. She sees it now, and she does not have a word for it, but the word she would reach for, if she were reaching, is peace. Not happiness. Not the relief of being rescued. Something structural. Something that comes from the inside and does not depend on circumstances to stay. Her hand comes up to his face. It trembles from exhaustion, not fear. Ani, he is already kneeling. His composure holds everywhere except at its exact edges, where holding it is costing him. I'm here. We're going now. Her eyes move across his face, reading him the way she has always read him, below the surface. In the parts that resist management. You're different. Yes, what happened? A pause. Not the pause of someone searching for words. The pause of someone who has found the truest one and is deciding whether to say it. I grew up. His voice breaks, very slightly, on the last word. Just that one crack, at that one word. And then the composure returns because there is work to do. Let's go home. Owen Lars meets them at the homestead's edge. He looks at his stepbrother carrying a woman he couldn't reach with 30 men, and then he looks toward the canyon country behind them, which is very quiet. He does not ask what happened in the canyon country. He helps get Shmi inside. Beru is there, and water, and the careful competence of people who live in a place that damages bodies and have learned what to do when it does. Shmi is beaten, malnourished. She has been held for days rather than weeks, Because the timeline compressed far enough for days to be all there was. The damage is less than it was in another life. It will heal. Anakin arranges the transport before he arranges anything else. A temple apartment on Coruscant already coordinated through Padam's office, pieces already moved. Safe, comfortable, the kind of place that has nothing to do with sand or heat or a life lived under someone else's terms. She has always deserved better than Tatooine. In another life he understood this and did nothing about it, and the weight of that inaction became one of the stones he carried. He is putting the stone down now. He tells her enough. Not everything. There is danger in the galaxy. He needs her somewhere safe. He will come back when it is finished. He says this the way a man says things he means, to keep not with the terrible helplessness of a boy returning to a war he didn't start, but with the full weight of someone who knows exactly what a promise costs, and is making it anyway. She holds his face in her hands before he goes. She does not ask him to stay. She has never asked him to stay. She understands, the way she has always understood things about him that exist below the threshold of his own self-knowledge, that this is what he is, something that moves toward the thing that needs doing, regardless of what the moving costs. He walks outside. The binary suns are setting. They paint the desert in Tatooine's specific red-orange, the color that exists nowhere else in the galaxy. That is both beautiful and brutal, because this planet is both of those things in equal measure, and has never apologized for either. Double shadows stretch across the sand behind him. The heat of the day has not released yet. It will. It takes hours, on this planet, for the ground to admit that the light is gone. He stands in it. He does not cry. He has already done his crying for this in the other life, in the years after, in the dark of the executor's corridors, when he thought no one could hear the respirator's rhythm stuttering with something that was not mechanical failure, and was not a malfunction, and was nothing the suit's diagnostic systems were calibrated to detect. He stands in the binary sunset and breathes. Real lungs. Real air. The desert's dry heat moving through him without filtration or processing, the way it moved when he was 9 years old, and this was just a planet. Just home. Just the place he lived before he understood that living somewhere and belonging there are different things, and before he learned that belonging somewhere can be taken from you, and before he learned, finally, at enormous cost, that it can also be returned. He breathes. And it is enough. The message is 7 words. Obi-Wan composes it with the care he gives to everything, not because the craft of it matters, but because the words do. They need to be the right words. They need to be the only words that could have come from the right source. I know what he told you you were. He routes it through the encrypted separatist frequency taken from Zam Wesell's equipment, addressed to a channel Dooku reserves for communications he would not want archived anywhere. He has maintained this channel since his departure from the Order. It is the channel a man maintains when he believes, somewhere below conscious awareness, that he might someday need to receive a message from someone who knew him before. The reply comes in 4 hours. Coordinates, a neutral station on the edge of the Outer Rim, not Dooku's ground, which tells Obi-Wan something. A man who insists on choosing the meeting location is a man who wants to control the conversation. A man who agrees to neutral ground is a man who wants to have the conversation more than he wants to control it. The message hit something. Obi-Wan did not doubt that it would. Anakin stays outside. This is agreed before they land. Dooku's force sensitivity would register Anakin's presence in the corridor before the door opened. And whatever the dark side tells him about the weight of the person standing 15 meters away, it is not the thing Obi-Wan needs him feeling when he sits down. Anakin stays outside. He stays quiet in the Force. Obi-Wan goes in alone. The room is small. The station is the kind of place that exists specifically not to exist a waypoint, an anonymous transfer hub. The galaxy's infrastructure rendered unremarkable by necessity. The table has 4 chairs, and Obi-Wan takes the one facing the door. He waits. Count Dooku arrives alone. He is 80 years old. He moves the way a man moves when he has never stopped training the physical authority of a great practitioner, maintaining himself past the age when most people would have allowed the body to argue. He wears traveling clothes, dark, without ornamentation. He has left his cape somewhere. This is, Obi-Wan notes, a decision. Dooku understands theater. The absence of the cape is the choice not to perform the count. He looks at Obi-Wan across the doorway and stops. He reaches through the Force to read him, the way he reads everyone: threat level, Force signature, alignment. He reaches into the bearing of a Jedi Master in his mid-30s and finds underneath it something that has no business being there. He does not feel a young man. He feels a desert. He feels 19 years of sustained silence, the specific silence of someone who chose to be small and stayed small for a very long time, and in doing so became something that silence does not usually produce: indestructible. He feels grief that has cured itself past the stage where grief is still an injury, into something that is simply present, permanent, no longer painful, the way old scar tissue is no longer painful. He feels someone who has been waiting. He sits down. "You are not what you appear to be," he says. Slowly, with the caution of a man who has survived to 80 by not underestimating the thing in front of him. No. Obi-Wan does not elaborate. He has spent enough time in silence to know when silence does more work than words. "What are you?" "I am the man you should have met before you made your choice." A pause, clean and unhurried. "I am Qui-Gon's student. I am also something else. But what matters is what I know, and what I know is this: Palpatine is Darth Sidious. You are not his partner. You are his expendable instrument. You have been building a movement that he intends to use as a pretext for absolute power. And when it has served its purpose, when the Republic is frightened enough to grant him emergency control, he will discard you for an apprentice he has already chosen." Dooku looks at him, the controlled pause of a man managing something large behind carefully maintained features. "You have evidence. Beyond the evidence, I have something better." He meets Dooku's eyes. "I know his plan. Every step of it. A beat, given its full weight. And I am giving you the choice that no one gave Qui-Gon. The silence that follows is specific, the silence of a proud man encountering information that threatens the architecture his pride is built on, and choosing, for just a moment, not to immediately demolish it. He wouldn't. The words come precise, controlled, the specific precision of someone managing an enormous internal force through the form of the sentence. "I am not," he stops himself. The word replaceable is physically difficult, not because he is weak, because he has built 20 years of justification on the premise that he is exactly the opposite, that Sidious chose him for his exceptionalism, that his departure from the Order was vindicated by being recognized by someone who understood what the Order could not. "I have given him everything. I have spent a decade building the separatist movement. I have given him a pretext for war." Obi-Wan's voice is gentle, not cruel gentle, the tone of someone delivering a diagnosis rather than an accusation. "Which he needs, which he has always needed. Not you, Count, the war, the fear. The manufactured crisis that lets a terrified Senate vote emergency powers into one man's hands." He leans forward, slightly, just slightly. "You are brilliant. You have always been brilliant. And he used your brilliance to build a cage he intended to lock the entire galaxy inside." The silence this time is longer. When Dooku speaks, the voice comes from somewhere different, not the Sith Lord, not the Count, not the man who moves armies from the shadows. It comes from somewhere older and quieter, the place that existed before all of those things were built on top of it. "Qui-Gon. He saw this. Qui-Gon tried to tell you. He couldn't find the proof. He was always looking, almost to himself. The aristocratic control has not gone, but something underneath it has shifted, the way a foundation shifts when one of its load-bearing points is removed. He never stopped looking, and I thought he was." He stops again. "I thought he was a dreamer." "He was," Obi-Wan says. "He just happened to be right." Dooku looks at his hands, the hands of a man who has held a lightsaber for 60 years. He looks at them the way only very old people look at their hands, not seeing what they are, but everything they have been. Then he looks up. "What do you want from me?" "The documentation. The separatist movement's actual evidence of Republic corruption, the real evidence. the legitimate grievances buried under the manufactured crisis, the financial records, the senatorial votes, the documented exploitation of the Outer Rim that predates your involvement and will outlast it. Obi-Wan does not look away. When Palpatine falls, those systems deserve political recourse, not a war they didn't start. You have what they need to make that argument. Give it to us. A long pause. And, if I do this. Quiet now. Contained. If I give you everything I have, what happens to the systems I have promised independence? That is a political question, not a Jedi one. It should be answered by the Senate and the representatives of those systems, not by us, and not by Sidious. A beat. That is the difference. Dooku holds his gaze for a long moment. I want to meet the other one. He says it quietly, watching for the reaction with the instinct of a man who has survived decades in intelligence work. I know he's outside. I can feel him. A pause. I want to understand what I was being replaced with. Anakin enters. The force in the room changes when he does not dramatically, not with any visible manifestation, but Dooku feels it the way a seasoned sailor feels a change in the current before it is visible on the surface. Something comes into the room that has an enormous gravity and is not using it. The choice not to use it is somehow more unsettling than the using would be. The two men look at each other across the table. Dooku reads the dark side in him immediately, not hidden, not performed, structural, the way consequences are structural, and then reads what surrounds it, what has been built from it. He has spent 80 years reading Force signatures. He has no category for this. Anakin looks at the man who cut off his arm in another life, who was a mechanism in the machine that built Darth Vader, who did not know he was a mechanism, who believed he was an architect. He says nothing for a moment. He simply looks. You didn't know. Not forgiveness. Simpler than forgiveness. A fact, stated without heat, without the weight that a lesser person would place on the saying of it. None of us knew. A beat. You can choose differently now. Dooku holds his gaze. Then, he nods. Once, Palpatine notices the first wrongness on a Tuesday. Then, the second. The third. The fourth. He is, above all things, a pattern reader. He has spent 60 years building an intelligence network that feeds him the texture of the Republic's political life in real time, not the official reports, which are curated and designed to tell him what people want him to know, but the texture underneath. The missed check-ins. The closed-door sessions that weren't on anyone's calendar. The small deviations in the behavior of people he has studied long enough to know their defaults. Jango Fett has missed 2 check-ins. Jango Fett does not miss check-ins. The Camino communication channels have gone quiet, not dark, not disconnected, but quiet in the specific way that channels go quiet when someone has asked the people on the other end to stop talking. Senator Amidala has been in 4 consecutive closed sessions of the Senate Oversight Committee, which is an unusual expenditure of political capital for a senator who is supposedly here because someone tried to kill her. The Jedi Council has convened twice in 48 hours, both sessions classified. Individually, each of these facts has an explanation. Together, they are a pattern, and the pattern produces a feeling that Palpatine has not experienced in decades, the feeling of not knowing what is happening in a room he is supposed to control. He summons Anakin. The walk from the temple to the executive building takes 11 minutes. Anakin counts them. He has been in this building 10,000 times in another life. He has walked these corridors in black armor while senators pressed themselves against the walls and hoped the darkness did not notice them. He has stood in the office he is walking toward and delivered reports and received orders, and stood still while the man behind the desk shaped him into something he did not choose to become. He does not let himself feel any of it. He files it. He pulls up every memory of a 19-year-old Anakin Skywalker standing outside this office, the eagerness underneath the pride, the specific way the boy held himself when he was about to enter a room where someone would tell him he was special. He dresses himself in it. He rehearses it with the care of a man who has exactly one opportunity to perform it correctly and knows what it costs to be wrong. The Red Guards do not stop him. They never stopped Anakin. The doors open. Palpatine stands at the window. The Coruscant skyline stretches behind him. Lit from within, the city's scale arranged to make the man at the window feel like a governing force rather than a person. He turns when Anakin enters with the specific warmth of someone who has practiced warmth until it functions like an instinct. "My dear boy." The voice carries something indistinguishable from genuine pleasure. His eyes move across Anakin's face with the attention they give every face, cataloging. Always cataloging. "I've missed our conversations. You seem a pause. The pause of someone finding the right word. Steadier. Somehow, Master Kenobi's been giving me additional meditation instruction." Anakin does not hesitate. He does not look away. He produces the face of a 19-year-old being seen by someone he trusts, the expression of a young man who is simultaneously proud and trying not to appear proud. It's helped. He's a remarkable teacher. A pause 1/10 of a second too long, then the warmth returning, seamless as water. You're lucky to have him. He crosses to his desk, unhurried. Everything unhurried. The behavioral signature of a man who has all the time there is. He sits. He folds his hands. I've heard there's been some council activity recently. Classified sessions. He looks up, and the look is warm, and underneath the warmth his eyes do not blink at the normal rate. Anything concerning? This is the test. Anakin has known it was coming since he walked through the door. The question sounds casual. It is not casual. It is a probe Palpatine inserting a fine instrument into the gap between what Anakin should know and what Anakin does know, listening for the specific sound of someone who knows more than they should. He meets Palpatine's eyes. He looks at the man who destroyed everything, who kept him in a suit of machinery for 23 years, who stood in a medical bay and told him the blood on his hands was Padawans, and he holds his gaze, and he does not let a single degree of what he knows surface. Nothing that would concern you, Chancellor, just training evaluations. Palpatine watches him. His smile does not change. His hands remain folded. His posture remains the posture of a man perfectly at ease with himself and the room. But his eyes move across Anakin's face with the patience of someone reading very small text in poor light, searching for the word that will tell him whether the sentence means what it appears to mean. He almost finds something. There is a quality to Anakin's stillness that is not quite right, not the stillness of a young man containing nerves or excitement, but the stillness of someone containing something far heavier, something that has been carried a long time, but when Palpatine reaches toward it, it is not there. The boy has attributed the change to meditation. The explanation is credible. He files it. He does not discard it. He files it. "Of course," he says softly, a beat that extends one moment past social comfort, then releases. "Stay close, Anakin. The times are uncertain." Anakin stands. He executes a Padawan's bow precise, correct, the movement of a young man in the presence of someone he respects. The last time he will make this gesture to this man in this room. "I intend to, sir." The moment the door closes, Palpatine's expression does not change. He sits at his desk and thinks. He contacts Mas Amedda first. 3 instructions, delivered in a voice that carries nothing, no alarm, no urgency, no tell of any kind. Mas Amedda has worked beside him long enough to understand that the complete absence of affect is itself a communication. He receives the instructions and moves. Then, Palpatine reaches toward the clone army's communication network. Not to transmit. To test the lightest possible touch, a query to confirm the architecture is still in place. The response arrives in 3 seconds. Emergency maintenance protocol active. All behavioral modification systems suspended for medical audit. Estimated restoration, 72 hours. He sits with this for approximately 4 seconds. In those 4 seconds, Kamino transforms from an asset into an exposure. Jango's missed check-ins transform from a professional irregularity into a data point. Senator Amidala's oversight committee sessions transform from routine political capital into a delivery mechanism. The Council's closed sessions transform from institutional procedure into the specific shape of a coordinated action that has been running, he now understands, while he was not watching. He sees it whole. He always sees patterns whole completely. In the moment the final piece lands, the entire structure visible at once. He reaches for his encrypted channel to Dooku. Highest priority setting. The reply comes from Obi-Wan Kenobi's comm unit. 3 words. We know everything. He is, for the first time in decades, without a move. He catalogs the options with the speed that has kept him alive across 60 years, in the sharpest rooms in the galaxy. He can run, but his entire network is built inside the Republic's infrastructure, and running means abandoning the game, and he has not spent 40 years on this game to abandon it. He can bluster, but the Senate Oversight Committee is in session right now. And whatever Senator Amidala is delivering into the record is already beyond his reach. He can deny, but the Kaminoan evidence is specific, and medical and witnessed, and the people who witnessed it have just told him they know everything. He can fight. That remains. It has always remained. He opens the hidden compartment in his sleeve with the ease of a man performing a gesture made 10,000 times. He turns the lightsaber hilt once in his hand slowly, checking the weight of it the way a practitioner checks a familiar instrument before a performance, and he sets it on the desk in front of him. Then he folds his hands on either side of it. And he waits. Coruscant. At night, the executive building's highest level is a lit window above the city's geometry of light. 2 figures approach from different directions through the Senate district, converging on a point neither of them has named aloud. He's not going to surrender. Obi-Wan's voice through the comlink carries the equanimity of someone reporting a weather condition. No. Anakin walks. Stride, measured, unhurried, the walk of a man who has decided where he is going, and needs no urgency, because urgency implies doubt. He never does. A pause. Are you ready? I've been ready since Tatooine. I know. A beat. The city moves around him, indifferent, enormous, lit from within by the activity of trillions of people who do not know what is about to happen in the building at the district center. Obi-Wan. If anything, nothing will. A quiet exhale, something in it that is not quite a laugh the shape of one, the outline where one would be if the moment were lighter. You've always been impossible to argue with. That's why I win. Anakin enters through the window. Not dramatically. Practically, he has come up the exterior of the executive building using force-augmented movement fingers and the force-finding purchase in Durasteel where no purchase should exist, moving vertically in the dark while the Senate district blazed below him, because coming through the door means using the path Palpatine prepared. An old lesson, learned from the man inside this room: never walk through the door that was opened for you. The window yields to him at the locking mechanism. He steps through. Palpatine is standing at his desk. His red lightsaber is already in his hand, one of 2 blades he conceals in his robes, the second kept in reserve along his left sleeve. A holdout he has never yet needed and does not intend to need tonight. He has been standing there for some time. Anakin can feel the quality of the waiting, the specific stillness of someone who has been ready and is choosing when to stop being ready. For one moment, one honest, unguarded moment, before the mask reassembles, something real moves through Palpatine's face. Surprise. He did not know Anakin could do that. The Anakin he was cultivating could not have. Then the mask returns. Seamless. You have made a mistake, my young friend. The voice carries its theatrical gravity, unchanged. The performance so practiced it no longer requires intention. Anakin lights his blade. Blue, in this body, in this life, the same blue he carried before Mustafar took everything. He holds it loose, easy, the way practitioners hold weapons when they are not worried about the outcome. I've made a lot of mistakes. He looks across the desk at the man who made him into most of them. None of them today. Obi-Wan comes through the door 9 seconds later. Palpatine attacks before it closes. Form 7. Juyo, the most aggressive form ever developed. Built on the principle that the best defense is the elimination of the opponent before defense becomes necessary. He is electric, vicious, faster than a man of his apparent age has any right to be, the Force amplifying every movement into something that reads as almost supernatural. It is not enough. Anakin has studied this fighting style for 23 years. He has watched Palpatine duel, He has studied recordings the Empire kept of the Chancellor's office confrontation that ended 3 masters in under a minute. He knows every preferred combination, every Juyo sequence, every tell that precedes the shift from blade to force. He meets the first assault with Form V and does not move his feet. He lets Palpatine's momentum arrive and redirects it, not blocking, redirecting. The technique of someone who understands that force does not need to be matched, only turned. Obi-Wan slides into Ceresu without drama. The effect is immediate. Palpatine cannot drive toward Anakin without Obi-Wan filling the exposed flank. He cannot attack Obi-Wan without Anakin pressing into the opening it creates. The geometry of the room, arranged by Palpatine to maximize his psychological advantage, is now a closed system with no favorable exits. Within 20 seconds, he is not fighting 2 people. He is fighting 1. He tries everything. Lightning first, the reliable weapon, the one that ended Mace Windu's assault, the technique that in another life burned through Anakin's connection to the Force and left him broken on a medical table. He generates it at full power, both hands, aimed at the space between them to catch both in one discharge. Anakin catches it in his blade and redirects it through the window behind Palpatine. The window detonates outward into the night. Coruscant wind tears through the office, cold, immediate, sudden, papers scatter. The room's temperature drops in seconds. Palpatine notes that the redirection was not effortful. It was practiced. Force push next, a massive compressed burst aimed at the Ceresu shell, designed to remove Obi-Wan from the equation. Obi-Wan is already moving before the gesture completes. He steps sideways with the economy of Form 3, using the push's edge to carry him into Palpatine's blind spot rather than backward. He arrives where he was not intended to be. Then, words. Palpatine has always understood words as weapons. He speaks mid-duel, voice carrying its rehearsed certainty even as the blades move. You cannot deny what you are. You felt it, the power, the clarity, the freedom from I know what it feels like. No heat in it. No performance. The flat certainty of a man reporting from a place he has already been. I chose it once. I know what it costs. A parry. A counter. A step that closes the distance precisely enough to force Palpatine to recalibrate his feet. I know what you sell, and I know what the price is. He absorbs a full strength blow into his stance, weight dropping into the floor, standing completely still for 1 beat, while Palpatine's force moves through him like a wave through rock. There is nothing you can offer me that I haven't already had and given back. Palpatine looks at him. For the first time, something moves in his face that is not calculation. Anakin begins pressing. Not rushing pressing. Precise weight applied with every exchange. 3 inches of territory taken with each pass. Palpatine's position moving toward the destroyed window without any single moment feeling decisive. Each individual exchange is close. Together, they are the operation of something that has no holes in it, because it was built by 2 people who know exactly what holes look like. Obi-Wan is simply there. Every gap Palpatine creates, Obi-Wan fills without occupying it, like water finding its level, like a correction requiring no effort because the system was designed to produce it. He takes nothing. He prevents everything. He does it without a word, without a signal, because he and Anakin are not communicating through signals anymore. They are communicating through the specific knowledge of each other that only comes from having been present for the worst and choosing to stay anyway. Palpatine is running out of chess moves. He is a man accustomed to 14 layers of contingency who has found, for the first time, that he has been read not just the plan, but himself, the person who built the plan. At the window's edge, the open wall with all of Coruscant falling away below it, he gathers himself for the last thing he has. He reaches for the second blade along his left sleeve, the held-back reserve, intending to draw it in the same motion as the lightning, a final double threat, designed to force both opponents to choose. Obi-Wan steps to the side, not backward. Sideways, he stops defending entirely, clears the line between Anakin and Palpatine, and does it with the absolute calm of someone who has thought about this moment for 19 years and is watching it finally arrive. Anakin steps forward. He does not strike. He closes his hand around Palpatine's extended wrist, the lightning arm, the raised hand. The gesture that ended Jedi in another life, and he holds it, and he redirects the discharge down into the floor. The stone scorches black. The smell of ozone fills everything. He holds him at the edge. Palpatine looks at him. Something in his face that has not been there before, very small, and very old, and very much the thing that lives underneath all the performances. You won't destroy the dark side. The first crack in the voice hairline, barely there, but present. It will come back. It always I know. Quiet, not triumphant. This is not triumph. This is completion. The specific feeling of a thing finished rather than a thing won. He looks at the man who took everything from him, and in the looking finds none of what he expected. Not rage, not satisfaction. Something quieter and stranger, without a name yet, that he will spend years arriving at. But not through me. He releases the wrist. The force push that follows is precise, controlled, not violent beyond what the moment requires. Palpatine goes backward through the open window into the Coruscant night. He does not fall silently. No one falls silently forever on Coruscant. The emergency rescue nets, the traffic management systems, the safety architecture of a planet that is engineered against accidental altitude death for 1,000 years they catch. The Senate guards Senator Amidala positioned at the base of the building 2 hours ago receive what the nets deliver. He is alive. He is not unharmed. He will face the Senate. He will face the record. He will face what Senator Amidala placed into the Oversight Committee's documentation while he was standing at his desk waiting for the door. A dead Sidious is a martyr or a mystery. A captured Sidious, stripped of every mask in front of the Republic he spent 40 years dismantling, is the end of the story he has been telling. Anakin and Obi-Wan stand at the open window. Wind, the Coruscant air at this altitude carries the city's specific mixture of engine exhaust and recycled atmosphere, and beneath it something almost clean. Above the light pollution visible only at this height on a clear night stars. Coruscant rarely shows stars. They are there now. It's done, Obi-Wan says. Quietly, looking out at the city. Anakin watches the stars. Is it? The chips are... The Senate has the evidence. Dooku's documentation is in the record. A slow exhale, something releasing in it that has been held for a very long time. The architecture is gone. What people build on the cleared ground, that's another story. A silence that has weight rather than emptiness. Obi-Wan. Not looking at him. Looking at the stars. Thank you. Don't. I mean it. I know you mean it. A pause. The specific pause of a man choosing the precise word. Don't. You'd have found your way back without me. It would have taken longer. But you'd have found it. Anakin looks at him. How do you know? Because you did once, at the very end. His voice carries no accusation, only the quiet truth of it, the weight of something acknowledged rather than judged. You always had it in you. I just should have said so more clearly. 20 years ago, when you were actually 19. Anakin says nothing. He looks back at the stars. 6 weeks later, Palpatine's trial runs slowly, the way democratic processes run when they are working correctly, with argument and counter-argument, with the submission and contestation of evidence, with the specific grinding patience of a system that has decided to be thorough rather than fast. He will be convicted. Everyone who has examined the evidence knows he will be convicted. The process exists not to determine the outcome, but to prevent the outcome from being questioned afterward. Count Dooku testifies before the Senate in the 3rd week. He speaks for 4 hours with the precision of a man who spent a decade building an operation and has decided to dismantle it the same way methodically, completely, without leaving anything standing that could be misread as equivocation. When he finishes, Senator Amidala rises to make the case for mercy. It is the appropriate place for that argument to originate. It is the only place it could survive. The separatist movement fractures without its manufactured architecture. Some systems return to the Republic. Others push for genuine reform, real grievances that were always there, buried under the crisis Sidious built to use them. This is the beginning of a long process. It is messier than the Clone Wars would have been. It is also more legitimate, and legitimacy is the thing that lasts. There is no empire. The temple gardens at mid-morning. The light comes through the upper courtyard tiers in the way it comes through old architecture, filtered, diffused, softened by the angles of the structure, until it arrives at the garden level, with a quality that is not quite natural and not quite artificial, and somehow more peaceful than either. Obi-Wan has been coming to these gardens since he was a child in the Temple Creature. He has never once sat in them without thinking that someone designed this space specifically to remind whoever sat in it that they were very small and the Force was very large. He still finds this useful. Yoda sits across from him on the stone bench and looks at him with the attentiveness he gives to things he has already decided about. "Old you have become," he says, "before your time." Obi-Wan considers this. Is that a question or a diagnosis? Observation. A pause. The pause of someone selecting the next word with the care of a man who has used all of them many times and knows exactly what each one costs. Wisdom, you have brought us. The kind that comes from loss. The kind we did not know we needed. His eyes move to the garden, the plants. The quiet specific to this place. Grand Master, the Council proposes. In my place. A beat of silence. Yoda, you can't. Old I am. Something in the voice that is almost amusement, very quiet, very dry. Tired, he looks at Obi-Wan. Not as tired as you, though. In here he touches the side of his head. Once, lightly, not as old as you have become. I'm 35. You are 100. Quietly, with the specific gentleness that only comes from someone who has carried enough of their own weight to understand exactly how heavy another person's is. Wear it well. You do. Obi-Wan looks at the garden for a long moment. He thinks about a desert, a hut, a long view and 19 years of making himself smaller than he was. He thinks about whether the thing that kept him alive in all that silence was hope or discipline or something that required both names and found neither sufficient. I'll try, he says. It is the most honest thing he has said in weeks. The council chamber. One final time. Anakin stands at the center of the horseshoe, the same position, several times over, each time different, this time the last. He looks at the 12 faces and does not feel what he expected. He anticipated grief mixed with relief, the specific compound emotion of things ending. He feels something cleaner than that. I'm not leaving because I don't believe in what this order is. He does not perform it. He does not need to. I'm leaving because what this order is already better than it was. And what I can do, what I need to do, I can do better from the outside. A pause. But I'll be here. When you need someone who knows what the dark side feels like from the inside. Something very quiet moves through his voice, the dark humor of a man who has earned the right to it. I have experience. The silence that follows is complete. Then, Mace Windu, who has spent 6 weeks privately cataloging everything he read in Anakin Skywalker during those first days, and arriving at conclusions he has decided not to formalize, does something no one in the council chamber has seen him do. He inclines his head. Not a bow, something more deliberate than a bow. An acknowledgement, the specific. Precise gesture of a man who has recognized something that does not fit his existing categories, and has decided that the absence of a category is not the same as the absence of the thing. Anakin receives it. He nods once in return. He walks out of the chamber. He does not look back. The blue lightsaber stays on his belt. The apartment in the lower Senate district is comfortable in the way Shmi Skywalker has never been allowed to be comfortable before. Not luxurious, not ostentatious, simply well-made and quiet and hers. The light through the windows is artificial but warm. The neighborhood below makes the sounds of a city going about its life, which is noise, but not harsh noise, the sound of things working rather than things failing. She asks him one afternoon, sitting at the table after dinner with the city doing its evening thing outside, if he is happy. He thinks about it for a long time. He gives the question its full weight, the way he gives everything its full weight, now. Because he has learned that questions deserving quick answers are rarer than they appear. I don't know yet, he says, but I think I might be able to be. She looks at him with the smile of someone who understands exactly what those words cost and exactly what it means that he said them. That's enough, she says. That's more than enough. The temple's youngling courtyard in the early morning. The light through the high windows falls on training mats and practice dummies and the specific organized disorder of a space used by children who take what they do seriously but have not yet lost the capacity for disorder. The courtyard is mostly empty at this hour. The formal training blocks don't begin for another hour, except for a 14-year-old Togruta girl sitting on the steps at the courtyard's edge. She has been at the temple for 3 months. She has not yet been chosen as a Padawan. She is beginning to understand what that means, which is a particular kind of understanding the temple doesn't warn you about when it begins. Anakin walks into the courtyard. She looks at him the way young Force sensitives look at people with extraordinary presences, a kind of involuntary attention, the Force pulling the eyes before the brain registers why. Something about this man is very loud, even when he is very quiet. He sits down next to her on the steps and looks out at the empty courtyard. Good morning. Carefully professional, the politeness of someone who has been told not to bother the older students and is deciding whether this person counts as one. Are you looking for Master Windu's training block? No. He looks at the courtyard. Then, at her. I heard there's a kid here who keeps beating the senior students in combat simulations and then pretending she doesn't know how she did it. A pause. I've heard things like that. The corner of his mouth moves. It is the closest thing to a smile that still comes naturally to him, not a full smile, not yet, but the beginning of one. The shape of where a smile has started to live again after a long absence. I'm not with the Order anymore. Officially, but I teach. He looks at her directly. What's your name? She straightens, despite herself the posture of someone responding to authority they didn't expect to feel and are not going to pretend they don't. Ahsoka Tano. He is quiet for a moment. He says her name the way you say something you have carried for a very long time in the dark and are now holding in the light for the first time carefully, with the specific warmth of someone for whom the name has always meant more than it could explain. He has carried this name through years he cannot describe to her, through the corridors of a future she will never have to see. A fixed point in a darkness that no longer exists. He has thought about this conversation more times than he could count, not this exact conversation, but the idea of it, the possibility that it could happen at the beginning rather than the middle of a war, before grief had time to make her into something harder than she needed to be. Ahsoka. A beat. How would you like to learn something the temple curriculum doesn't cover? She looks at him. She does not know yet what this moment is. She does not know that the man on the steps beside her has said her name in the dark of rooms she cannot imagine, that she was a thing he held on to when he had nothing else worth holding. That sitting here in this ordinary courtyard in this ordinary morning light is the thing he would have chosen if anyone had ever asked him what he wanted and he had known how to answer. She knows only that the Force around this person is the loudest thing she has ever felt, and that he is asking her a question, and that the answer has never been in doubt. Yes, she says, the Sith are extinct. Not eliminated, you cannot eliminate an idea. But the infrastructure is gone. The Lord, the apprentice, the manufactured war, the hidden army, the waiting order. What replaces it is imperfect, as all things built by committees of living people are imperfect. But there is no empire. Obi-Wan Kenobi is Grand Master of the Jedi Order. He holds the position for 11 years before passing it to a successor, and he is difficult about everything and correct about most things and never, ever stops working. He carries his 100 years behind his 35-year-old face, and the Council learns, over time, to read what lives in the distance between those two numbers. It takes them a while. He is patient with the learning. Anakin Skywalker lives in the Senate district with his wife and his children twins, who arrive 2 years after the wedding, a boy and a girl, loud and Force, bright and entirely themselves, and teaches a girl who was already more than she was supposed to be. He tells her once, when she asks about the dark side, it's real. It calls. And if you ever feel it calling, you come find me, because I'll know exactly what you're hearing. And I will tell you what it costs. She never has to. He always thought that was the point. The darkness still lives in him. It always will, a second heartbeat, a permanent companion, the record of what he was and what he chose not to remain. Some nights it is louder than others. Some mornings he wakes, reaching for an absence that isn't there, and for a moment the two timelines sit on top of each other, and he has to wait for them to separate. They always separate. He does not fight the darkness anymore. He simply does not follow where it leads, and in that not following day after day, in the ordinary rooms of an ordinary life, he did not believe he was allowed to have something accumulates. It does not have a name yet. It is not redemption, which implies a clean accounting, a ledger balanced. It is something quieter than that. Something that will take the rest of his life to fully understand, which means he has the rest of his life, which is the thing he was never supposed to have and was given anyway. He is all right with that, more than all right. Let us know what you'd like to see next. The end.